recently completed the rebuilding of a front differential on a 2009 Arctic Cat 500 automatic transmission. And customer called me. The symptom was four-wheel drive not engaging, and the first thing that came to my mind was the actuator. The unit's a 2009. The actuator's, getting up there, assuming it's the original one. And from what I've gathered, those typically go bad. I was upset to find out that it was not the actuator. When I put it in the air, I actually figured out that the fill plug of the differential was missing, which ended up resulting in the differential being run out of gear oil, which obviously is a catastrophic thing. A lot of metal-to-metal contact happens, when you don't have proper lubrication and cooling, if you will. But anyway, I was kind of disappointed to find out. I've done some Polaris units, and typically you can find a rebuilt one either online for a Polaris, or there are some guys across the country that rebuild them and sell them. But with this Arctic Cat unit specifically, there was no option to purchase a rebuilt one or a refurbished one, or even a used one on eBay. The options were buy a brand new one for a ton of money, considering that the quad's a 2009, or to rebuild the existing one. And we ended up going forward with rebuilding the existing one to save some money and start over there. But anyway, there's a video montage, a video timeline here to follow with the process of rebuilding it. And at the end, I'll go into some further detail about some of the tools you need to do this and some of the gremlins that you have to look out for regarding this job. A couple things that you definitely want to get right. So enjoy the montage. Alright, so we've got two things going on here. Um, the pin is for your four-wheel drive, and then this shift fork pivots this ring around this part of the ring gear. So basically, when you engage or disengage lock, it's cable actuated, which is basically being simulated by these lock jaws here, lock pliers. And then you might wonder, well, what is this guy doing here? It is the sensor to know that it is locked or unlocked. So continuity, good continuity here. So right now the shift fork is not touching the sensor on the inside of the case. There's no continuity. But if I can do this. When the shift fork comes up and makes contact with the sensor, you get continuity. All right, I wanted to spend a moment talking about some items that should probably be discussed in greater detail regarding this project. Just words of caution and patience. So specifically what I'm talking about, I'll have pictures here to follow, but the lock collar, the bearing the flange bearing, and where to source parts and information to make this job a little bit easier for you. So when I say lock collar, this is what I'm talking about. This is probably the most tedious part of this entire rebuild or job. And the biggest issue here is that you're working with soft aluminum, fine threads at 125 foot-pounds. And when you get to this step of removal, that lock collar does not want to come out. No matter how much leverage, how much heat, how much patience you have, it doesn't want to come out. So, you finally get it to crack loose when you feel like it's going to break. And usually what occurs when you have a fastener on this tight is you pop it loose, and then not does it freely spin with your fingers, but you start to be able to run the threads relatively quickly and easily. And unfortunately, with this fastener specifically, that is not the case. It is tight the entire way out, and it is not fun considering that that case is probably very expensive to replace. And that's the problem. It's not just the lock collar that you're replacing if you destroy it. It's the threads on the case. And, you can't just put in a time insert. You can't just run a tap through it and clean up these threads. You're talking about a tap that is very large, very expensive, very difficult to find. I would imagine the average machine shop doesn't even have this tap to clean those threads. So, take your time, use the correct tool, heat, patience, similar concepts that I always discuss. And when I say special tool, I sourced this bearing nut removal tool from a guy on eBay. And if you search it, it'll come up. But he's a really good guy. First dealing I had with him, responds very quickly to questions. The shipping took longer than I thought it would, and it wasn't his fault. But this is a very reputable, or I should say reputable, very quality person to purchase from. And the tool fit tight. The only other thing I have to mention is the hex up top, I think was a 30 or a 32 millimeter. So you're going to have to plan ahead for that a little bit. When you go to reinsert, in my case, I used a new collar on installation. But I spent a lot of time cleaning these threads up, just polishing everything up, making sure there was lube there. This is like one of those things you get one clean shot at it. Don't mess it up unless you want to shell out a lot more cash to fix the problem. And I watched the video on BSK Garage via YouTube, and he had the same story of how much patience is required to avoid this struggle. So again, just take your time here. Hopefully you don't have to do this job. Hopefully this is just for entertainment purposes. All right, 413 bearing flange bearing. The one that came out of the unit, which you can see in the top center of the picture, broke. I don't know if it was because due to lack of lubrication, it froze to the bearing and it just didn't want to come out upon removal. But the only way for me to get it out was to break it, unfortunately. So I kind of knew that I was going to have to replace it, and I had priced it out and kind of figured out the timeline before I ended up breaking it to get it out. But one unexpected issue that I had here, if you see my fingers running across the top of the new one, I had to spend a lot of time just kind of polishing this up and making it clean to get it to just seat properly into the case cover. And the only explanation I have for this is it's the same part number for the last, I don't know, like 10 years or something. Maybe not quite that long. But there is a subtle difference where the differential communication like lines up with this piece into the case. And I don't know if the tolerances are a little different as they got newer or what. I mean, the part number should be different if that's the case. But ultimately what I'm getting at is I ran into an unexpected hurdle here, and just patience and really Dremel work solved the problem. But don't be discouraged if you get to this step and something isn't lining up perfectly. It's just, again, one of those gremlins that you have to deal with every now and then. And then just a word about sourcing parts and information. All Balls Racing, probably heard my spiel on them before. I've never had an issue. I mean, been dealing with them for years. Rebuilt several carburetors, forks, shocks. Never had an issue with All Balls products. Country Cat, this is a more recent thing for me. I'd say in the last year that I've been dealing with Country Cat. The thing about Country Cat is if on their website, well, number one, they have a great website. It's easy to use. But number two, if the inventory on the website says it's in stock, it's in stock. Or at least in my dealings with them, it has been in stock, which translates to the part ships that day or the next day, which is great for me. And what I'm ultimately getting at is that situation compared to other distributors who say in stock or lead time a day or two, more often than not, that has not been accurate. So, you spend the time researching, you say, I want this part, it's in stock, should ship in a day or two, and you get an update and it says, like, it's going to be X amount of days or weeks. And, it's just a frustration of you're doing tech work, you want accurate data so you can plan ahead. And Country Cat has kind of been somewhere that I've been going to a lot more and more recently. I'll just put it that way. And then I ended up getting the flange bearing off of eBay. So I went with a good used one out of a newer model, a newer year unit, I should say. And it worked totally fine after I spent some time shaping it, polishing it, I should say. So All Balls Racing, for those who don't know, a lot of websites have something of this nature nowadays where you just go through the drop-down menus and it makes your life a lot easier. But regardless of what machine you have, it's nice to know what manufacturers make what parts because they're typically cheaper than OEM parts. And even if you don't want to order directly from All Balls, you can still get the ABR part number and type it into eBay or Amazon. And if you're a Prime member, you get Amazon Prime shipping, 2-day free shipping, I should say. Okay, a word about Country Cat, same thing. You can use the OEM parts diagrams. It's pretty self-explanatory from here. You just follow the steps to get where you need to go. And again, I'm very happy with their website setup. It makes my life a lot easier. But one thing that is not as common with websites of this nature is they have this tab up here called technical information, and it takes you to this page where you can get factory service manuals. And sometimes I spend, this is usually a sub 5 minute task for me to acquire a service manual for a unit, but sometimes it's a little more difficult to find them than others. And the fact that I know that Arctic Cat products are right here on this website saves me a lot of time. And, thing about tech work is you shouldn't be guessing. If you're doing this type of work and you're guessing, that's a recipe for disaster. And what I mean by that is you need to know the right part, you need to know the order of operations, you need to know the tech spec regarding, clearances and torque values, and again, like guesswork, especially with some like, engine work, differential, things of that nature, that's going to lead to metal-to-metal contact and a disaster. So anyway, I hope this was helpful to you. Again, I hope you don't have to do this job. It is not the most difficult thing I've ever done, but it's definitely something that you have to be careful, and it's time consuming, and you got to get the parts and tools and things of that nature. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching the video, and let me know if you need any or have any questions.